I just got potty trained. Sorry.
Oh, good for you.
That's an aside.
Yeah.
The
mic is on, man.
Organized money.
I can't stand buzzwords kind of as a general rule. And we have a new and annoying buzzword that has entered the lexicon here recently, and it's the word agentic. Are you into agentic things?
I don't know what it is, and I hate it. It is like
Yes.
it is like I saw the CEO of Wells Fargo just being about credit card caps saying, "Oh, we're all concerned about affordability," and the affordability is at least
Right,
I know what
affordability is now.
agentic. Like, what is agentic?
So it's really a fancy way of saying bots. So we all go to a website and you can't get customer service anymore. And instead there's some clippy bot that shows up and says, hey, do you need help today? And that's basically an agent for that company or for that website. And so agentic AI is the use of these bots to do things for a client being the human being.
So,
and in this case, it's shopping.
I see. So agentic, right? Okay. And there was I did read some stuff about this. I know that in this Christmas in November, I saw stories about how this was going to be the start of agentic shopping, and
Right.
and they're like trying to figure out, all right, how do we get people to shop through ChatGPT or
Yeah.
Google Gemini or whatever.
And by the way, I'm the kind of person that when I'm shopping and a sales clerk comes up and says, is there anything I can help you with? I really want to say, go away. And now I have to tell an AI to go away while I do the thing that I want to do. But the theory that these companies, I guess, have is that an agent is going to steer you in the direction that the company wants you to go in terms of what to buy or how to operate online.
You know, so the article I read was about the National Federation, National Retail Federation.
National Retail,
right?
Yeah,
Which is a it's a trade association. They do a conference every year where everybody comes and shows their new cool retail bags, cash registers, whatever it is. And this year, unsurprisingly, it was all about the use of AI. In fact, the article was, and basically everything was annoying. It was like, we have various forms of clipping that kind of replace salespeople or whatever it
Right.
is. The last thing was actually the only exhibitor or one of the few exhibitors that didn't use AI, and they just were like, here are our new cool bags. And it was like kind of refreshing for someone to be like, we can make bags.
Like, how
for-
nice. I need a bag. Yeah, that'd be great.
Bags for supermarkets or whatever.
But the big kind of main event announcement at that National Retail Federation conference was from Google, not a retail firm per se, but from a company that apparently has done all of these partnerships with different retailers to create agentic AI that will assist people in the shopping process.
Right. The Google CEO Sundar Pichai actually gave the keynote, and he talked. So this is like obviously very important for Google, that they are basically trying to create the plumbing for how the retail economy is going to work, and it's going to all get plugged into their AI tools, Gemini, which also look at your Gmail. They also look at your Google Maps. They look at your Google Photos. They look at YouTube. They look at everything, that all the Google properties.
Right.
And now they're going to be integrating into all of these retail platforms, and they're going to be helping you do shopping. So that we think that's a kind of a big deal, and all sorts of implications. So we brought on a really good guest who can help walk us through what this means.
Absolutely. And she picked up on this right away and went kind of viral talking about what Google's plans are. And her name is Lindsay Owens. She is the executive director of the Groundwork Collaborative. She has a highly anticipated book coming out this year called Gouged, The End of a Fair Price and What That Means for Your Wallet. And we're going to have her on right now to talk about Google and shopping. It's Organized Money. Lindsay Owens, thank you for being on Organized Money.
Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So you do something that I think not You do something I think that not a lot of economists or people studying the economy actually do. You listen to what business leaders say. And I'm wondering why is that so rare? It seems like the first thing you should do if you want to understand the economy is listen to the people who are running it.
Look, I think there is a lot of theory in economics, and that theory guides a lot of strong opinions about how the economy should work. And I have found throughout my time in Washington, but really even before I got to Washington over a decade ago, that I was more interested in how things do work than what economists say about how they should work. And to better understand how things do work, I like to say sometimes it helps to close your textbook and open your eyes, or in this case, sometimes open your ears and listen to what executives are saying about their businesses, the business outlook, what they hope for the future in their communications, often in their earnings calls or investor days, but sometimes just what they say when they go on Squawk Box in the morning about what they're thinking about. So that's sort of the MO of my sort of style of thinking about the economy. I try to understand what's happening on the ground to real people, but also what companies are thinking about and saying as well.
So I
it's like
feel
one
like
weird trick.
Hello?
Listen to people.
Sorry, am
go ahead.
can you hear me? My internet keeps
Yes.
cutting in and out, which is really
Yes.
frustrating. Okay, sorry.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So David, I'm going to ask, David, it feels to me like that was a super passive aggressive question. Like, why do you listen to economists? Like, economists with their little dork charts. And how did you decide to actually look at truth and justice in the American way versus dork charts? So I not to be just to put it on the table, I'm going to be straightforward. I am racist against economists. I just
there you go.
Ever since I heard Alan Greenspan being like, "Whoa, fraud exists," I'm like, okay, I don't care what any of you say now, for what it's worth. All right, so that passed. How did you? So Lindsay, who are you? You've been in DC for a while. You got into this. This pricing thing. I talked to you before we got on. You were like, I haven't coded since grad school. Who are you? Tell us about your journey.
Yeah. My day job is that I run a think tank in Washington called the Groundwork Collaborative, and I've been doing that for about 5 years now. But I came to Washington about 11 years ago, and I got my start as an American Sociological Association Congressional Fellow, which is something that doesn't exist anymore. But for a brief period of time, the AAAS, the American Association for the Advancement of the Sciences, ran a fellowship program in Washington where they brought different scientists who had just finished their PhDs to hang out in Congress for a year and try to apply their trade, but also learn a little bit about how the policy environment works. And it was great because you were free labor. So you could come to DC and then try to get in with a senator or a committee and work for a bit. And I was lucky enough to get to post up in Senator Warren's office. And this was in 2014. It was really very shortly after she arrived in Washington. She was quickly making a name for herself. She was ascendant. And part of the reason that she was so effective is she was, doing really interesting work, but also she had quite a megaphone, right? She was using the media effectively. She was using committee hearings effectively. She was using digital media effectively early on. And so I got
She was the only one being like, the bank stole a bunch of stuff. What the fuck, guys?
Yeah. Maybe that's an important thing to say. The reason I chose her is because I had finished a dissertation on the housing crisis. And over the course of that work, I had, I'm going to borrow a phrase from someone we all know, Sarah Miller, who says radicalized by HAMP. Over the course of that work, I had gotten radicalized by HAMP. This is the Home Affordable Modification Program. But really more to the point, radicalized by the fact that policymakers in Washington were bailing out banks, but looking at homeowners as if they were trying to pull a fast one on us, right? And that was frustrating. Senator Warren was one of the few people who was calling that out, naming it, trying to fix it. And so over the course of that PhD research, I was watching her closely, her campaign, her time at TARP, and the Congressional Oversight Panel. And I was like, wow, if I could figure out a way to go hang out with her for a while, I think that would be time well spent. And I was able to do it. I stayed in her office for four or 5 years, and the rest is history.
Great. So, during the inflation after the pandemic, you and a lot of people, us, were focused on, how much of this rise in prices could be attributed to things other than sort of basic economic forces, basic supply and demand ideas. And you went to these earnings calls and you found that CEOs were talking a lot about, the ability to capture price, the ability to, raise prices without losing market share. How has technology played into this opportunity that was given to large corporations by the pandemic?
Yeah, look, when the inflation crisis started in 2021, it was basically the first period of inflation in almost 50 years, major inflation period in the US. And so most Americans really didn't know what to expect. Most people who are working in policy in Washington, they had experience with 2 or 3 or 4 recessions. They didn't yet have experience managing a period of inflation. So there was a lot of uncertainty. Because there was very little data to help us understand what was happening, where inflation was coming from, how to think about stemming it, we started looking at the earnings calls because, CEOs don't have the sort of luxury of waiting a year for, official reports from the Fed or the Bureau of Labor Statistics, right? They're reacting in real time. And we learned some interesting things. The first interesting thing was CEOs weren't that worried about inflation, and that was surprising, right? Our costs were going up. We were paying more. Their costs were going up. Their input costs were going up. They were paying more. Why wasn't that a problem for them? Well, it quickly became clear that they were confident in their ability to not only pass along their rising costs, but in some cases go for a little bit more. So that was thing number one. But thing number two was throughout these calls, you were hearing CEOs talk about the rare opportunity in this moment to start taking some of their tools and technologies for pricing off the shelf and putting them out and going live. And why was this happening? Well, a lot of pricing technology has been with us for a really long time, but one of the main impediments to rolling out pricing technology is consumer backlash. And during a period of high inflation where everyone is expecting prices to go up, the worries about consumer backlash actually come down, right? Because the cover of inflation allows for changes in price. You're expecting those price increases. We actually saw this again in how CEOs responded to Trump's trade war. There's this great moment where Barkin, one of the chairs of the Richmond Fed, holds a roundtable with CEOs, local CEOs. I think he's in Richmond, but this particular CEO who he talks to was from Chapel Hill. And he says, look, are you guys raising your prices because of the tariffs, or are you raising your prices because of the tariff noise? And the CEO from Chapel Hill says, it's actually both. I hate to admit that, but it's both. Doesn't hate it enough to stop, right?
And also he hates to admit it on the front page of the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, it's crazy.
Barkin's a good interviewer. He was really pulling it out of the CEOs, right?
Go ahead.
But I feel like that speaks to sort of like they're not ashamed, right? And because the people that they're, just to get back to the economist thing, like economists are just sort of saying, oh, it's all supply and demand. What do you mean that power or pricing of these business executives have anything to do with anything? And so the business leaders don't actually think it's bad to explicitly say, yeah, we have market power, so we're going to raise price. Say it publicly, say it frequently. And they're just sort of like, well, the only people who care are these stupid, dirty hippies, and they don't matter. And I think it's what we've seen for a really long time. For the financial crisis, where economists were saying, yeah, foreclosures, they have something to do with the bad economy. Like, that's crazy, and we keep seeing it over and over and over. But one of the things that I think, we hear a lot of theoretical statements about AI, and this is kind of why we want to talk to you today. And you have an extensive experience with pricing and with finance. But, the trade conference that was recently put on by the National Retail Federation, where all the retailers and technologists come together, the only thing people seem to be talking about, or at least what the reporting came out, was AI shopping bots, AI in-store stuff, AI pricing engines. So how has AI grown in prominence in the retail earnings call and the chatter that you hear, because you pay close attention to it?
Yeah, I will say the first time that I really started to think more deeply about how AI would influence shopping, and in particular how AI would influence pricing, was when I started looking into this really burgeoning cottage industry of AI pricing tech companies. And this is something that really came out of those early inflation earnings calls, is that these CEOs were talking about their partnerships and their acquisitions of a whole host of companies I had never heard of before, right? These were not household names.
Right.
So these were companies like Eversight, which is the AI company that Instacart acquired to run pricing experiments on shoppers. These were companies like Fetcher, which is an Israeli artificial intelligence company that Delta has partnered with to set fares more dynamically, more aggressively. And, there was a little brouhaha over the summer where Delta got in trouble for its AI pricing practices. Interestingly, Fetcher did not. Fetcher really turned heads in the business community and actually went and raised another round of Series C funding, $40 million.
It was like bad
right
guy
after that
PR.
Delta controversy.
There's
me
no
to be the
such
villain.
thing. No such thing as bad PR. Absolutely.
It's like,
That's right. I mean,
it's like the
and-
villain
yeah.
in Die Hard is like advertising his bank robbery services.
Yeah, the Fetcher,
Hans Gruber.
100%.
Gruber with two R's. Gruber with two R's. Yeah. So I mean, it
Somebody
was
should start an app called Gruber.
So it was at this National Retail Federation conference where Google actually made all these announcements about what they were going to do on AI and shopping. So could you explain what their plans are and why it piqued your interest in the context of all this other stuff going on?
Yeah. So I've been looking into surveillance pricing for a while now, and in part with the help of you, Dave. We started this work for an issue of the American Prospect a couple years ago on pricing technologies. And as I've been looking into it, it's become clear that the engine of surveillance pricing is data. And so a lot of what companies do is track your shopping behavior online, right? How long your mouse hovers over something, what you put in your cart and don't buy, what you put in your cart and do buy, what you buy regularly. And they also partner with other companies that have even more data on you. There's a company called LiveRamp that basically puts together consumer social security profiles, right? They call them ramp IDs. Like, we all have a special number with LiveRamp. Right. We don't know it like our social security number, but they do. And LiveRamp collects all this data about us, and then they set up these clean rooms where a company can come in with their like little bit of first-party data and hook up with LiveRamp's big brother data set, and they use it to understand our consumer insights, to create things they call consumer intelligence scores. Right? Smart people are people who are price sensitive in a consumer intelligence score. Dumb people are people who buy without a coupon. Right? So they put together all this behavioral data, but it's in part because behavioral data is good at predicting our future behavior, but it's in part because they can't ask us what we want, and so they're trying to infer it. And so it became clear to me that AI, and particularly conversational AI, was the opportunity to stop having to infer our behavior and our intentions and start asking us what we wanted. And that, I think, when you started to think about it that way, conversational AI became kind of the holy grail for surveillance pricing. And so it was something that we expected maybe it was already happening, or it was something we expected to see soon. And then we got it last week when Google announced their Universal Commerce Protocol. And it looked a lot like we expected. They were going to integrate conversational AI data with search data, with retailers' data, and use it to create specialized offers for us, custom offers based on our, quote, user context. What's the user context? It's the stuff we pony up, right? So that was sort of the first, I suppose, reaction I had to the Google announcement. This is going to be
just curious,
personalized
what's
pricing
different?
on steroids.
What's different about chatting with a chatbot and just sort of the stuff that bots are doing? I mean, we encounter like all this surveillance on every website that we go to and app and everything, and even in stores, and we've for years, right? So what's different about this kind of new chatbot thing?
I mean, I think the type of information you could be offering to the chatbot is much more personal. I mean, I think of it as a sort of breadcrumb trail into your soul. I'll give you an example. You were trying to potty train a toddler, not something I currently have experience with. No, it's on my mind.
Right.
And you're...
Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification button so that more people can get exposed to organized money. Really appreciate it.
Big fan.
I just got potty trained. Sorry.
Oh, good for you.
That's an aside.
Yeah.
The
mic is on, Matt. The microphone is actually on right now. We all heard.
Oh my God, that's so embarrassing. That's really embarrassing. Sorry. Go on. No, never mind. Let's move on.
It's late at night. You're frustrated. You don't know why it's not working. You're going into ChatGPT asking questions about methodology. And then, the next day you think, okay, my friend told me about this potty training book. I should really try to get this potty training book. You fire up Gemini's customized shopping. I think they call it the curated AI shopping help.
Okay.
And you say, look, find me this book. And of course, in theory, it knows that you're a really stressed toddler mom, and it decides that, you're not going to get a discount because they think you'll pay full freight, right? And so I think the idea here is that they might bundle some meth. We want to upsell you.
Yeah. You need that too.
Something to keep mom spirits up in addition to babies.
Yeah, why not? I'm
into this AI thing now.
When Sundar Pichai, who's the CEO of Google, announced this, he was on stage with this guy, John Furner, who's going to be the next CEO of Walmart. So this is coming to us fully formed. They already have partnerships. Walmart, Visa, MasterCard, Shopify, Kroger, Macy's, Stripe, Home Depot, American Express. So most of the payment architecture and a lot of the big box stores. So my question is, what's in it for Google to have these partnerships? What do you think the business model is for Google? We know that they're pushing people to these sites that they're working with, right? Or these companies that they're working with. But what are they getting out of it?
Yeah, so I think what is likely going on here and what is going to happen, and I'd be really curious for your thoughts as well, is this is effectively going to be the next profit generator after search for advertising. And what you're potentially going to see is companies paying to be featured first or exclusively or most prominently in the results of conversational AI and in the shopping results of conversational AI in particular. And so
if you want our bot to steer you to our products, you have to pay us. So we're the gatekeeper, just like we've been on search, where you have to buy ads to get to the top of the search list.
Exactly, and I think it means a couple of things. The first is I think it could be ruinous for those of us who actually do use conversational models and feel like right now we're sometimes getting good information from them. Because it will convert them into basically a pay-to-play space. in which
Right.
we won't know if we are getting the response that is the result of the training of the model, or if we're getting the response that is a result of the advertising partnership, right?
Right.
And
Right.
many people have warned about this. Actually, most prominently, Mark Cuban has been very vocal on Twitter and in other spaces about how this will just turn conversational LLMs into garbage, right? And so that, I think, is a worry from the perspective of folks who hope that these models will continue to be useful and continue to be productive for society, right? Productivity improving.
Got it.
But I think for the purposes of like how we want our economy to work and the future of commerce, I think the concern here is that there is, and I think, Matt, your piece in Big really delved into this in a really interesting way. There's a question here about conflicts of interest. So who does the agent work for? Does the agent work for me? Is the agent's client the consumer? Or is the agent's client the merchant?
Right.
And it will be hard for us to know who the agent is serving.
Well, let me ask you. So it seems to me that there's an important part of the Universal Commerce Protocol, which is that Google isn't just doing advertising now; it is also helping us set prices.
Yeah.
And that strikes me as like the biggest deal. Is like, okay, so the rest of it is, it's just maybe you could look at this Gemini as a more advanced form of search, and there are conflicts of interest, but those conflicts of interest apply on search as well.
Right.
But Google actually setting prices, like Walmart going to Google and saying, help us, set a price for a KitchenAid stand mixer or whatever it is, that's different, right? That is a big deal to say to Google, we're going to hand over our marketing campaign and the ability to price. So
and it's not just, Matt, but Matt, isn't it not just tell me how to price this KitchenAid, but tell me how to price this KitchenAid for Lindsay Owens? Like that's the secret sauce. That's what they're asking for.
Exactly. So it's like we have Instacart, right, which was doing these experiments on dynamic pricing. You have other companies that are doing personalized pricing, but now it's Google helping every company in the economy do personalized pricing using the data that Google has on you, which is obviously extensive, right? Is that sort of a fundamental difference here that Google is now is doing price coordinating services across the economy?
Yeah, look, I think the potential for that here is pretty clear, and the place where Google themselves put a finer point on it was I tweeted about this a little bit, and in their reply to my tweet, they basically started the sentence with, have no fear, we restrain price. Right? We won't be charging more because
we can only lower prices. We can only give discounts, right?
But also we pick the prices to begin with.
Right. So they're being discounted off something that we are choosing, right? So that's different. And I don't think you can divorce this from the context that Google made this deal just recently with Apple, that essentially Apple has outsourced their entire AI strategy to Gemini, which is going to power Siri. So not only did Google already have the largest store of data available to run this massive price setting project, they're now going to be on every single phone in the world, because now they're not just on the Android phones, but on the Apple phones as well.
Yeah, and not to mention, of course, Google also made moves to allow Gemini to integrate with your calendar, right? So, they know mom's birthday is coming up, and then you're like, I want to get a bouquet of flowers, right?
Right.
Or integrate with your photos. She really likes to wear sweaters, right? She's in a sweater every time she's photographed.
The analogy is if you manage your life on Google, now the sales clerk, effectively your sales clerk, knows everything about your life, and then thereby knows everything about your needs.
But so I feel like this is a little understating the dynamic, because while it does look like, okay, it's similar to what Apple and Google did, Google is also doing things like integrating Gemini into your fridge. They have a deal with Samsung on fridges, but they're also integrating it into every Home Depot. They have something called Magic Apron, where when you go to a Home Depot, you can't find something. Well, they're going to presumably Gemini will now be able to sort of replace the staff or supplement the staff and say, where's this thing, where's that thing, and then also get information on you. But they're doing this with every space that you go into and with partners across the economy. I mean, you mentioned it, Dave, but this is like a fundamentally different thing than just personalized pricing on you, because it means that they're not just doing it. I think the Lowe's is also a partner, so they're doing it with Home Depot and Lowe's, right? And that is like a crazy thing to be saying. We're going to be setting prices or organizing discounts across the whole hardware sector. Traditionally, we've said that's a problem. So to sort of combine all of these experiences and all of this data across all of these sectors, it feels like a problem that we kind of don't really have an analogy for. So, it's like, is it price fixing, like kind of ish? Is it personalized? Like, what is this? Like, how do we even, I don't want to go like full dystopia because, this is early days and people may not buy in chatbots, who knows? But this feels like a step up. Am I wrong to kind of adopt that level of paranoia or what?
No, I think you're exactly right. So I agree. The surveillance pricing piece of this is the tip of the iceberg. It is, the heft of the iceberg is the potential for this to really end shopping as we know it. And you're right. It is hard to sort of pick the right word for this. I mean, it does seem almost certain that prices will converge, right? To your point, this common model, this common algorithm is involved in pricing and retail decisions for both Nike and Reebok, both Lowe's and Home Depot, right? And so that is a real concern. But also, eventually, you could imagine the Gemini shopping system sort of eating up the typical Google shopping system that you use in the browser, right? So it's really too early to tell exactly what will happen here. I will say, the dystopian piece is the end of shopping as we know it, right? But the slightly optimistic take is I played around with shopping on Google Gemini, and the experience is terrible. The only thing I can say that it reminded me of is if you had to go back to the mid 90s and try to do online shopping in Microsoft DOS. You go in and you tell it what you want and you just get 3 lines. Do you want the Hanes toddler underwear? Do you want the Auden toddler underwear? You don't get pictures. You don't get any information about the different brands so that you can compare them. It's sort of just like getting a black and white
it's like playing
cut of an
the
Excel spreadsheet.
Did you ever play the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy text-based game? There was this text-based game where you would type in commands and then it would tell you the next prompt. This is very, very early AI from the 90s. And there was certain places where you could only go forward. So you would go left, you can't do that. Go right, you can't do that. Go forward.
Yeah.
Oh, now there's the thing. It's just very dumb. But this is, of course, early days. And my real fear about it, actually, is that people will like it. So one thing I think has been really clear is that the public hates every single idea about pricing and AI that they've been presented with. You mentioned Delta, Wendy's, when they put up digital menu boards, people couldn't stand that. But I'm not sure people are going to hate AI agents doing their shopping for them, especially if it gets to the point where Google's agent is making purchases for you in the background of everyday items that you kind of have to get. It in theory, it takes care of some of these hassles of life. If you need replacement batteries, the AI knows how long that your batteries last, and they'll just get that done for you in the background. I feel like that's how it's going to be sold. It's this is the great labor saving device.
But wait
all of
a
this
second.
worry about shopping, you're not going to have to worry about.
Are you saying that, okay, if you take friction out of the process, right, you make the shopping experience better. Are you saying that you don't like the fact that the shopping experience could be better, or you don't like that they are baking in coercion into improving the shopping experience? This is for you, Dave, because I
just
think,
don't
want to be
I'm thinking,
technology.
I'm separating how this is going to be sold with how this is going to operate. It's going to be sold, it seems to me, as we're going to take care of the annoying stuff that you don't want to think about in your life. You're never going to have no orange juice in the house. Like, we're going to take care of that for you. You're just always going to have it there. And a normal person might think, oh, okay, well, I don't like shopping, and they're going to do that for me, and that's going to be great. In reality, there is all of this stuff that we've been talking about where, companies who are supposed to compete are basically in this weird collusion with Google as the central focal point, changing the price. So I'm talking about how it's going to be sold, and I think it's because we haven't seen an AI kind of pricing tool be sold in a way that anyone is interested in. And this might be
because
one of them.
AI is often really fucking annoying, right? I use like we were talking about this offline. I use Claude Code to build a website. It's actually really neat. There's all sorts of cool things you can do with AI, but most of this stuff feels really top down and annoying. And but I would say like the technology, we have to distinguish between the technology and the coercive power that's embedded in it, which often it actually holds back the coolest technology.
I agree.
But I want to go to something slightly different, which is, right, Google has this history of being a predator, right? So at first, newspapers thought, like in the early 2000s, hey, we have this space that we sell, the remnant space on the website. Nobody wants it, so Google will help sell it. And then over time, they realized, oh, shit, Google is turning everything we are into remnant space, and now they have pricing power, and now they've destroyed us. They've done that over and over and over to lots of different industries. Amazon's done it too. Why, if you are a retailer like Home Depot or Lowe's or someone else that has a brand that people like, why are you handing over such strategically important capacity to Google? Like, this seems crazy to me. Why would you do this?
Yeah. Can I quickly jump in on the last question and then answer this question?
Go for it.
Yeah. So just two things about, is it any good and will people use it? The first thing I'll say is it's not very good right now. And what that says to me is this is a rare opportunity that we have before the horse is out of the barn to try to regulate it, to try to pass a law, to make sure that it is working in our interests. I think something around conflicts of interest, making sure if the agent is working for you or for the merchant could make a lot of sense here. But I really do think the fact that the horse isn't out of the barn, the dissemination and uptake of this is not widespread at the moment, is an important thing. There's a lot of stuff that has escaped, and now we're trying to figure out how to wrangle it. This is not one of them. We're early here.
Okay.
The second thing, to your point, Dave, about will people like it? It's interesting. I think one of the reasons that people will like it is because it solves a problem in part that they have created already, which is shopping online sucks, right? Comparison shopping is really tough because of dark patterns, because of drip pricing, because of all of these things that make online shopping tough. Like, am I getting this? You're never comparing apples to apples, right? And so you have to spend a lot of time researching. So being able to outsource that to an agent is awesome. But in part, the convenience of that is actually a direct result of sort of what they have done to the internet over the inshitification of the internet over the last several decades. But Matt's point is exactly right, which is even if it is convenient, it may be a real problem because of the control over pricing, because of the potential conflicts of interest. You outsource it, but you outsource it for more of a premium than you realize, right? Because it is selecting prices or selecting products for you. It's selecting prices for you that are much higher than you would get otherwise, potentially.
Yeah. So one thing that I think is fascinating is, so you wrote about this on Twitter. It went a little viral. And Google felt like they had to respond. We touched on this before, but tell us about what they said and what did you find interesting, both about the fact that they felt like they had to respond and the response itself.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to answer Matt's question.
Oh,
I'm one question behind. So Matt's question, why is Home Depot interested in this alignment or this partnership? I don't know that I haven't sort of delved into the business plans here enough to be able to answer that definitively. But I would imagine it's kind of a most favored nation type situation where, some of these retailers are worried about being left behind when ultimately Gemini is selecting products for people. They want those to be Home Depot products. And I imagine getting in early feels like an important bet, right? But it is absolutely the case that you're losing some control over your pricing potentially. You're losing some control over your visuals, your image, your brand. Those things don't show up in the current Gemini shopping portal. You don't have full visibility into how the algorithm selects you versus one of your competitors. So there's a lot that you would lose, but presumably, folks feel like they need to be at the table or they're going to get eaten. This is right. Conjecture, but this is sort of what I imagine they're thinking right now. There may also be other elements of these partnerships that will understand better soon. Be good to get into the earnings calls, and we will, of all of the partners, to see how the partners are talking about these partnerships, what they're telling investors about the benefit of engaging in these alliances and teaming up with Gemini. But I think that's sort of my hypothesis, and it's something that we're going to look into a little bit. Google's response. All
right. Wait, I want to follow up something on that real quick, and then I'll ask my question again.
Okay.
I think you're right about that. That Google is selling the inevitability. So if you're a company, you don't want to be left out of Google's game that is going to be on every single phone, and then is going to be the standard by which shopping is created. They're selling the fact that they're going to be ubiquitous, and that's really important to understand the dynamic. But one thing I think that's fascinating here is that, and we touched on this before, that you wrote about this on Twitter, you wrote about the UCP when it came out, and it went a little viral, and then Google felt like, oh, we have to respond to this. And they respond to you. And what did you find interesting, both about the fact that they felt like they had to do that and about what they actually said?
Yeah, I need to pull up the response so that I get it right. But
sure.
Okay, couple thoughts. The first thing is I was pretty surprised that they responded, and I immediately went into Google's Twitter replies to see, like, did I just not know that Google is like a Twitter reply guy, or is this an unusual thing? And, I went pretty far. I mean, I didn't, I spent about 20 minutes scrolling. They are not a reply guy. This is a very unusual move that they made. Almost all of their tweets are sort of corporate announcements, PR style announcements, like very, very curated, et cetera. So this was a very unusual move. The second sort of thought that I had was, wow, from a sort of crisis communications perspective, this was not a particularly shrewd move, because the fact that they don't often reply to people like me meant that this was kind of news. And so
I noticed, I was like, whoa. I read it because I was like, Google never does that.
Yeah. So there were a lot of people who write about tech companies, including Google, had the same reaction. And so there were like 24 stories about this Twitter spat. None of them reached out to me for comment, but people just wrote up the.
Hey, Google, stay off Twitter.
Correct. So,
everyone should stay off Twitter.
If you didn't want people talking
including
about
Google.
This, if you didn't want people talking about this, this was the wrong approach to take. I mean, it's in TechCrunch, it's in Search Engine Journal, it's in Cyber News, right? It's in the International Business Times, just tons of small and mid-sized kind of tech-centric and business-centric outlets covered this. And almost all of them use headlines like, is Google's new tool the next frontier in surveillance pricing, or Google's new tool presents concerns about surveillance pricing, right? These are not headlines that Google would want to see. But then the third reaction I had is I read an article in The Sling that analyzed Google's response to me. And I also showed the tweet to a top antitrust enforcement official who I just happened to be meeting for a coffee, coincidentally. And, his eyes popped out of his head when he saw the response, because they're effectively conceding in writing that they restrain price, which is a problem since they're in active litigation in AdTech and other litigation where they're arguing that they don't do this, right? And so I think the tweet probably also didn't make its way through legal either. So that was another sort of reaction that I had. And then I also had some sort of like quibbles, I would say. So, they think that upselling is this great opportunity for consumers because you get offered a higher priced premium product. A lot of consumers don't feel that way about upselling. They just feel like they got ripped off or charged more and they didn't get something premium. So that was interesting. But probably also interesting is something that Matt had pointed out. They sort of said, oh, we don't raise prices, we just do discounting. But of course that's, price discrimination of discounts means that some people will pay more than others, right? Some people will will get higher priced products and some people will get lower ones. What is the reference price that they're discounting off of? That will also be hard for us to determine. Obviously, illegal not to offer a bona fide reference price and to just like concoct discounts out of thin air. But we see it in a lot of places where you have list prices for drugs and healthcare, as Matt's written about, that companies discount off of, and the list prices and the reference prices are meaningless, right? So it was interesting that they're really leaning into upselling being virtuous and offering premium products, discounting being virtuous, trying to stay away from price hiking. But at the end of the day, this is going to result in some people paying more than others.
So there is a psychological element here about pricing that I think we're going to have to wrestle with. And so I'm going to bring up Jason Furman, and I think he tweeted this.
Thank
he
you.
might have just told me personally, but he said, I was talking to my class and I said, how many of you think there should be a special surcharge on people between the ages of, 18 and, 64 who go to the movies? And everybody was like, absolutely not. And he said, well, what do you think of a discount for seniors and kids? And they were like, oh, that's fine. And he's like, it's the same thing functionally. And then, he chortled like,
yes.
You guys are idiots, right?
Chuckle.
Yeah. But there is, you do see this. We talked to Sam Levine about this problem, and he talked about loyalty programs and how, in most of the laws that are consumer protection laws in states, all of them actually that deal with discriminatory pricing or unfair pricing, there's always this loophole for discount programs and coupon programs. They're saying, oh, it's fine to discount, right? But what we do see is that discounting is the same thing as upselling or surcharges or price discrimination. Is just psychologically people receive the idea of discounts from a high price differently than they see having a normal price and then having surcharges. So I don't know, how do we think about this is if Google is saying, like, I know that maybe Uber should have not done surge pricing and should have done like, you get just special discounts off of the normal price, and then when it rains, you get normal pricing, right? Like, how important is this psychological framing, or is it something that at first it will work, but then over time people will kind of catch on?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question, and actually, the Uber example is so fascinating to me because, if anything, Uber's greatest contribution to the economy has surely been mainstreaming, popularizing, sanitizing the concept of surge pricing and making dynamic pricing feel technical and efficient when actually, often it resulted in being overcharged. And you believe that its algorithm is purely based on supply and demand and not based on something else, right? That you're being given a price that is perfectly efficient rather than just like whatever Uber feels like charging you in that moment. The behavioral economics of pricing is just the most extensive literature you could imagine sort of thumbing through. It's something that like Kahneman got a Nobel Prize for like a long time ago when he was doing experiments about how people understood price increases in response to storms or in response to tariffs or in response to supply chain issues. It is something that the business side of is so extensive. Pricing consultants, pricing advisors, they have been since the 80s, like building these incredible labs using data from Nielsen and scanner data. Now they just run the experiments on us in the e-commerce platform with using, software to service companies like Eversight. But they know exactly which things we prefer and which things that we balk from. And Google is very aware of that, which is why they're couching this in terms of discounts. And the behavioral psychology of this is considerable. I mean, in fact, the upselling premium pricing thing is funny because often, like, when companies upsell you, they don't actually care if you purchase the upsold item. Really, the whole point of upselling is to make the base price item feel like a bargain, so you grab it immediately when you maybe weren't planning to grab it, right? The biggest benefit of offering a premium product is it drives more people to the base product. So all of this is very carefully manufactured based on really extensive consumer science. And of course, that science is going to get better and better as they're able to feed in all sorts of additional information about us and connect with data across a whole host of retailers. One thing I'll just add here, the most interesting partners for me in the update are that they are partnering, Google and Gemini are partnering with the credit card companies, Visa and MasterCard. Right. And that is interesting because far better than getting all of the consumer data from Kroger, where you do your grocery shopping, is getting all of your Kroger data and all of your Home Depot data and all of your car insurance data and all of the other things you put on a credit card. I mean, getting credit card data is really the holy grail for shopping because you also have data on competitors because maybe you eat at Wendy's and McDonald's. So it's the Visa and MasterCard data is very interesting, and I imagine that was quite a coup for Gemini.
But I want to just add a little bit of hope because I think at the same time as you see all of this new data and stuff, Uber is done a bunch of things in the economy. One of the things Uber has done has taught people that surge pricing and all this dynamic pricing is bullshit, right? And so you do see a political reaction and you see popular reaction. People are angry about it. So I don't think, and I think that's why Google responded to you. They understand that, in 2013, people might look at this and say, oh, surge pricing, supply and demand curves, cool. But it's 2025 and people are saying, no, this is being manipulated, and so price is much more political. I want to just add some hope here. Like, if it's not these godlike scientists that are kind of controlling and manipulating us, we have agency too. So,
I agree with that, but I think at another level, because of the relationships that Google is attaching onto the massive amount of data they already have, they might be able to pull this off without having to personalize price at all. Like, if they run enough tests, they might have a pretty good sense of what's going to work based on aggregate data rather than personal data. That's actually, when I looked at Fetcher's presentations, that's actually what they want to do. They say, we do 1 billion tests, and that's how we're setting this airfare data. It's not about somebody's specific price. So if we start doing legislation to say, no more surveillance pricing, no more personalized pricing, and they say, oh, wait, we're not doing personalized pricing, we're just running tests. That's what Instacart said. So I fear that it's this massive accumulation of data that is going to make, allow them to sort of opt out of these regulatory structures that might be set up to block this.
Well, to the point that Matt made earlier about, the extent to which you're going to start seeing sort of coherence, conversion in pricing across an entire sector and across an entire industry. Fetcher, I looked in a little bit to the history of how it came up, and it's sort of 3 dads in Tel Aviv built it, and their sort of idea was, what if you built an LLM for an entire market, right? And so they call it an MLM, right? Market.
Right.
What if we use AI to price things?
They do, yeah.
Yeah, right. They're like, it's not interesting to just understand Delta. What's interesting is to understand everything.
Yeah, and they feel like they have enough
sector
data to do that. Yeah.
they're exploring new markets. They're looking at finance as their next, one of their next opportunities. So I think that's right. And you're right. Look, I don't mean to suggest that, these guys are evil geniuses and there's nothing that we can do to combat them.
It actually offends me how
can be
not
true,
smart
though.
they are.
One
because I
is-
feel like we're losing to these clowns. Sorry, I don't mean to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the Google, like the Twitter reply actually is the best example that sort of proves that point, which is like from a communications perspective, from a lobbying perspective, from a legal perspective, like this was not a smart Twitter reply, right? Like,
I also think, Matt's accusing me in this conversation of not being hopeful. I do think it's hopeful that, 2 years ago, we would have all said, oh, well, the goal of AI is to create God and machine and dominate all life on Earth. And now it's about getting, selling rugs at a 10% markup. Like this is good. Like if ChatGPT just wants to fuck with shopping, like, okay, like we'll get to have a life after that.
Yeah. That's right.
I'd rather it do
What is
that
that
than
expression?
not than
Shoot for
turn
the
us all
moon
into
and you
Soylent
like
Green.
something upon the stars or something like. I don't know. Like shoot for creating God, and
Right.
then you'll eventually be able to sell rugs slightly better.
Yeah.
Which
But they are choosing their words carefully, right? Like that's all we should point out. They're choosing words like discount and upselling carefully.
100%.
Yeah, but that's not wrong. I mean, look, the Instacart study shows like, consumer boycott, consumer backlash can change practices. People, throughout history have tried to roll out pricing practices, and there have been two disciplining features, right? Disciplining feature number one, of course, is the one that we're all hoping for, which is competition. And disciplining feature number two is consumer backlash. And, the example I always love to use is in the 90s, the Coke CEO, Doug Evester, let slip that he was installing thermometers on Coke machines so that he could dynamically price based on weather. It's a hot day.
That's right.
More for a bottle of Coke. And even in an age before things went viral on the internet, before Twitter existed, before TikTok existed, it was on the front page of every newspaper, right? It was on, it was in Honolulu, Philadelphia Inquirer, pick your national newspaper. And Pepsi seized on it, again, not only consumer backlash, market discipline. Pepsi said, we can promise you we will never exploit your thirst. We're in the business of quenching it. And, to this day, to my knowledge,
I love that.
Although there are places
Pepsi.
where...
Pepsi,
Well,
no thermometers.
if you can get bad guys to do good things, I think that's what we should, that's a sustainable political system,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
Checks and balances.
Yeah, we don't have thermometers on vending machines for dynamic pricing. I will say we did learn this summer, thanks to some really amazing investigative reporting by a group of interns at the Las Vegas Review Journal, that the casinos have basically removed price tags and have started using dynamic pricing for things like Monster energy drinks and beer in the sundry stores. And of course, they charge more on Friday night when you need an energy drink before you go out, and they charge more for sunscreen on a hot day and things like that. So,
and they have the most inattentive customer base.
I cannot believe
possible.
that casinos
people
of all
in
places would
Vegas
be acting unethically. Right? All right.
Actually, in the story, which I really love because I love the idea of like interns doing this really great piece, but in the story they interviewed a guy who had clearly been drinking, and he admitted that when he first went back for another round of beer and the price was higher, he at first just assumed that he had been drinking too much and just didn't remember the original price.
Oh, that's funny.
And then when he was sort of told what happened, he was like, "Yeah, that doesn't seem quite fair." So
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, this was really fun. I enjoyed it, and we should have you back to talk about. I mean, assuming that we don't fix this problem and that there are going to be new, evolution of pricing, we should have you back.
Yes.
Big assumption, I know, because I know justice is right around the corner.
Thank you. Thanks, Lindsay, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Organized money.
As we were talking, and I think you and I both write about this, it's like one of the, I feel like the remedy for the Google antitrust search case, right, which we've talked about before, the failure of Judge Amit Mehta to actually penalize Google for monopolization of search really emboldened Google to say, "Oh, you're not gonna stop illegal behavior in search. So why don't we do what we did with search, but do it to the entire economy and all prices in the economy?" And it's this. I think it's kind of like this giant tragedy of a judge who is too scared to actually enforce the law.
And the sad thing is that the Justice Department, at least under Jonathan Cantor, was saying exactly this, that, we have AI coming up, and Judge Mehta kind of used that as an excuse, like, oh, I don't have to punish Google search or do anything on that because AI has come in and now it competes with search. But the real thing that Cantor was saying was that you can't allow the same structures to happen in AI that we had with the past. And if you don't sanction this now, they're going to be emboldened. And we saw them walk right through this open door.
And they will use this inflection point. So there's an inflection point right now where traditional web stuff is kind of moving towards this generative AI model. It's somewhat similar, maybe more extensive than the shift from desktop to mobile in the 2010, 11, 12.
Right.
Now, Judge Mehta looked at this inflection point and said, oh, look, there's all of these new AI competitive services. There's OpenAI, there's Anthropic, there's Google, there's, Microsoft. And right. So why do I even care about this old, hoary, search monopoly? But what Jonathan Cantor said is that the same things that make search better, stores of data, capital investment and data centers, the ability to lock up talent, the ability to distribute, all of those things are what is going to determine who wins in AI. And what we have seen is that Google has leveraged its search monopoly into increasingly a monopoly of generative AI. It hasn't achieved that monopoly yet, but Gemini is quickly gaining share on ChatGPT. It's quickly gaining share, and everybody, I think, the consensus on Wall Street is Google has won.
It's clearly moving in that direction. A couple months ago, there was this sort of boomlet of stories about how Sam Altman is concerned about Gemini. There were all these stories saying, there's a code red going on at OpenAI because Gemini's update of its AI model was leaps and bounds better in terms of compared to the last one than what ChatGPT's update of their AI model was. And now they have these partnerships and this vertical integration that they're leveraging these relationships and doing really the kind of things like with the Apple deal for Siri that was at issue in the search case. They literally are like, okay, we'll do that partnership again. We'll pay them money.
I look at this moment and it just makes me sad because there was this opportunity where you could have had a very different rollout of generative AI, right? The idea being, if Google was prevented from monopolizing the space and vertically integrating, you would have had a bunch of different companies competing to look at your email, and with different privacy capacity. You would have had a bunch of different companies that were competing to actually work with, doing the agentic stuff, but without the coercive power behind it. And it could have looked a lot more like the internet in the 1990s, but with much cooler technology, much freer space, much less suspicion. The whole pricing, the coercion behind what we're talking about, we're talking about Google as a central planner now. We could have avoided all of that and had a much better generative AI. And instead, we're going to go back to this kind of highly centralized model, and it sucks. It's just a big tragedy.
And it was one guy. It was one guy that could have made that happen, and he chickened out.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. There's a potential appeal. I am not optimistic because I think that the Trump DOJ may want to appeal, may not. But I don't think they're very smart. I just don't think they're very.
And the difference. I agree, but the difference between the beginning of Web 2.0 and Web 3.0 or the AI era now is that the public is more tuned in. So to the extent that there's a silver lining, the people are really, really concerned about these, especially in the pricing space. They're really concerned.
And I think it's not just the public, but I think that these businesses, Home Depot, the CEO, these guys know that they're getting in bed with a predator. So,
Right.
there is a recognition that, like, if Google, I'm sure they have built in protections into their contracts with Google as they're moving forward in a way that the newspapers just didn't. So there is a much more, there's a lot more awareness of the power of Google and monopolies and the techniques and tools to address it. But we do need to do some real thinking about what to do now with this vertically integrated monster that is dominating generative AI, which is obviously an important area.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to keep keeping tabs on it, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Organized Money.
Great.
Organized money.